So in between the activity, the conjunction, and the stressful repercussions of activity at the square, you get going along in the conjunction, you're going along, and then there's a bit of stress, you're making a bit more effort to make it, I have to make a bit more effort in doing that, and then there's a calm period where you're being productive, you're being active, being productive, it's moving along, but it's not really, it's more in a flow or in a groove. Then you're going to run into stress. By the time you get to the square, it's just before it's the calm before the storm of the stress. So the sextiles are in that period, they're on the activity half. So they're kind of spontaneous, easy productivity, I would call it. It's active, it's productive. We're on a roll, things are going along, no immediate interference. It's kind of smooth. But at the same time, that smoothness is less productive than the stress. So everybody says, oh, that's nice, I want to be smooth. But if you're going to make things happen, they happen more out of the stress. So out of dealing with the stress properly. So then you get to the stressful square. And from the stressful square, we get to up to the trine. After all the stress we're going through, suddenly, you pushed it out, you got through it, people are backing off, and it's moving along smoothly again. So you have a period, a phase of the trine where things are going smooth for a while until it gets to the stressful understanding. You think you're acting, you're doing, your understanding seems like it's going well. Okay, what could go wrong? Then someone disagrees. Or someone has some other twist to it. And there's, oh, there goes the trine. You know, so you can have 5 or 6, 7 trines in your chart, but one square will cause more trouble than the 6 trines, 6 or 7 trines. Okay. So trines have a harmonious flow, but they're on the awareness half. So they're not so much about activity. Trines is, I got past the square, I see where I'm going, I see where the awareness is coming to, I see where it's going, I see what I have to do. So there's a sort of smoothness of vision. There's kind of a visionary or smoothness of vision around the trine, where there's a smoothness of energy, of activity at the sextile. So that smoothness, as soon as you got the smoothness, you know the next step is going to be less smooth. But you ride with it while you got it. Okay, then you get the semi-square, you make the adjustment, then you're going along further until you get up to the opposition. Then when it goes back, it's the same way. You got the understanding, pushing, understanding, making the adjustments. And then the trine comes in as a period where you're kind of flowing on the, I see, you got the understanding, you made the adjustment, it's going along, no hassles, cool. And then some conflict comes from because of your understanding and someone else's perhaps different understanding, or just the stress comes in and that vision disappears. Oh my goodness, it's not the way I thought it was. Then you have to start working, and that's the stress. So you make the stress to adjust your understanding to keep going with a new understanding or an adjustment to it. And you get through that, and then you start rolling along, and things are getting done. You're working, you're progressing. That the sextile comes in again. You're progressing, and then you run into this stressful activity. It's not just going smooth. It's only smooth for a time, and then you run into some stress or some adjustments. Sometimes I'll have to take care of this, and then eventually have to complete it so you can get to the new activity starting. So now we've put the main 8 phases in, but we've added the other 2 major aspects, the smooth aspects against the stressful aspects. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Thank you. Okay, so this is we're just progressing along. So there's so many things going on at the same time, and you can understand them, but you don't have to use all of these pieces of information at the same time. It's there. They selectively come up, and then you begin to start reading into when you go into them in various degrees and depths, as is required. So this just draws the sextiles and the trines and puts them in to the place where they are. But that's as best a way as I can explain the relevance of the sextiles and trines experientially against the phases of the light, in the phases of the light and dark. They really came out of the mathematical divisions, and because they're the third and the sixth, they seem to be major numbers, so they have to mean a lot. So they're basically what they mean is they're the easier or less stressful aspects of periods where there's a bit of productive. The sextiles, there's often lots of them in a chart. They're productive. But it's hard to always say exactly what that productivity would be. The same way with the visionary nature of a trine. But when you get to the stress factors and you start talking about them, people know you're talking about it. It's easy to walk in and talk about stress and how to use it. So again, here we have the 8 phases, the aspects going around it, and the degrees involved in it. And let's see. Yeah, this just puts the I Ching trigrams around it. They represent we're going to get to this more and more up at level 8, but this is just the greatest darkness, the greatest light. Just is another description or another level of understanding each of the phases. Okay, so again, this takes the yin and the yang symbol and puts the greatest brightness at the full moon, the greatest darkness at the new moon, and puts the trigrams around it. So this really came out of notes on the I Ching and how it fits to astrology and how they interrelate. And this is just one of the aspects showing it. You can see the 8 trigrams building up in the colors and the phases and the aspects. Again, the main factor is you have the stress points of the aspects and you have the phases between them. So it's not like an aspect that's just floating out there. It's coming from somewhere, it's going to somewhere. It's part of a process. And it's an adjustment part of the process. Okay, so now we can see all this detail and all these things, but what we're looking for now, where we're trying to go, is to interpret a natal horoscope. So if we start using all this detail and all these factors, we get lost on interpreting natal chart. So we're going to go into these phases. We have calculated the aspects. Our aspectarian, the computer calculator, tells you when something's a square or when it's an opposition or whatever. You can calculate yourself and get it. And what we're looking for, we're going to look for just, there's a square, say here's the conjunction, and you notice there's this black line around the conjunction. It goes a bit before it and a bit after it. So this is the orb of influence. So anything within this area is going to be mostly the conjunction. It'll be in the orb of the conjunction. Although technically, the waning half up to the conjunction is very different than the waxing half coming out of the conjunction. Okay, the conjunction is the turning point. But generally speaking, this whole period of the new moon, of the new impression, that's all there at the conjunction, and plus or minus so many degrees, which would be the orb. So we calculate the exact position of a planet. We calculate the exact degree. Well, the degrees of separation are your aspects. So really there's 360 different degrees. It's not just there's 180, it's building up to 180 and coming back from 180. Although many people see it like that numerologically, but the waxing and the waning is very different. So really there's 360 different aspects. And we calculate the separation between planets and we see what the aspects are. And we see if they fit into what's considered a major aspect or a minor aspect or no aspect. Technically, you can't have a no aspect. There's always a relationship between each planet to each other. They just not be as dramatic as the stressful ones or the primary ones, but there's still going to be a relationship going on. It's not like there's suddenly void and nothing means anything. No. What the aspects are really determining, wherever there's a major square, conjunction, or opposition, there's stress. It's a stress indicator. So we're going to look at the aspect to see how much stress is there. And we're not looking at all the details or anything around it when we're going to be doing our worksheets. We're just going to be trying to relate to the stress between any two planets. And if it's a conjunction or square or opposition, we're going to see, it's going to have a specific stress highlight. If it's a sextile or trine, we're going to include the sextiles and trines so you see the difference. But we're going to, so anything, if you're using a planet, looking from a planet, it's going to be anything from 7 degrees to 0 degrees to 7 degrees. Like it's a 14-degree orb, 7 degrees on either side. If two planets are like that, they're basically in conjunction. Okay, it's a stress factor. It's pushing for conjunction. Okay, when it goes long to get to the square, when it gets to the sextile, there'll be a lot of people make these smaller because the sextiles aren't so noticeable, but I think you still allow the 7 degrees, 53 to 67 degrees is still going to be the sextile and the phase of the sextile. From 80 to 100 degrees would be the orb, no, sorry, 83 to 107 would be the orb for a square. And 173 to 180 to 173 would be the area for the opposition. And again, we're at 97 back to 83 for the square. And those are, so what these are, when we're looking at any aspect that's between planets, that's a square, conjunction, or opposition, we know it's a stress factor. There's going to be stress between those two planets, between those two functions in a person's life, between those two dimensions of consciousness in that person's being. There's going to be some stress or some struggle or some challenge to have to overcome. If it gets overcome, great things can become. If not, there'll be a lot of disruptive things that can happen in a person's life. So what I'm getting to is, even though I'm showing you all this extra information just as a preamble, but really each planet's a different level of consciousness. Each planet's a huge thing. It's living. And when we're studying astrology, the planets are like the gods, or the I guess you could call them the angels or the jinns if you're Islam, or if you're a Muslim, but it would be like planetary bodies, higher beings. They're not God, but they're functions that are affecting our lives. They're higher beings that affect our lives. And if we adjust it properly, we align with the gods. We align with these higher beings and make our life work better. Or we work with our psychological complexes in our today's world. So from different levels of consciousness. But it's amazing how much you can see when you do it. But really, a planet, we see the planets and the signs, freedom and responsibility. Light's greater, nighttime's greater. It's increasing. It's freedom moving towards it, responsibility moving towards it. So the idea of freedom and creativity and responsibility and belonging. Those are in the signs. So if a planet where it is, you see how much that planet's going to be motivated. You see the coloring. That planetary energy, which is the real being, is being affected by the attitude of the sign. Then once that attitude comes in, affects itself, it puts its energy into the affairs of the houses, and it's either projecting or reacting, or it's objective or subjective. So it's still a planetary energy that's key. The signs are just a scale that show you the attitudes. The houses are a scale that show you some of the circumstances that the planet is in, but the planetary energy is the key. And the planetary energy are like people. You meet someone, and you know them, you like them, you don't like them, you notice certain things. You meet them a second time, a few days later, you meet them a second time, and you notice other things about them. You meet them a week later, and again, you're getting to know them a little bit more, you find a little bit more, and as weeks go by, you meet people more and more, you're always discovering, hopefully, always discovering new things about them. And things in common or not in common. You're discovering and exploring that person until you become aware of that person. Well, our relationship to the planets are the same way. We got our first initial concepts of a planet. We're tuning into these functionings. So I'm really teaching these whole things of how planets are affected by signs, how they put their energy into the houses, and in the aspects, how easy or difficulty it is. So the more stress there is, the more effort it's going to take to express your planet. The more tension and stress there'll be, the more can be accomplished, but it has to overcome some obstacles of stress. There'll be stress there. So it's enough to use the aspect as stress indicators to understand character. You don't have to go further than that. It's just how easy or stressful do the planets relate to each other? Is one making the other job easier, or are they having to work things through to make it work? It's important. This is the key thing, that suddenly we're not looking at phases, we're not looking at anything else, we're just looking at these little orb phases around the aspects when it's these critical times of adjustment.